there, and welcome to the Transparently Jordan podcast, where I'll be talking with a new guest each week, and we'll be covering topics in health, fitness, lifestyle, and so much more. So stick around and let's get into today's episode.
But basically what it is like an FU to the man kind of fund, meaning that if you have enough saved to pay your bills for 3 to 6 months, if you really hate your job, if your boss is being a total jerk, or you've been looked over again for the promotion or the raise, and you're just sick of it and you're done, you can walk out the door knowing that you can still cover your rent, groceries, gas.
What is going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode. Now, this is going to be a very, very short intro. I am in the middle of moving right now. I have finished uni. There is just so much going on. So there will be a new solo episode coming out in the coming weeks with an update, as well as just a little bit of, I guess, my own experience the last 2 years. So that is to come, but let's get right into today's episode. Now, today we are talking with Catherine Lee, who has already been on the episode. She is the very first person that has come back for a part 2, which is super exciting. And today we just chat about various other things that we weren't able to chat about during the last episode. So I am super excited for you all to hear this, and let's get into it. Alrighty, welcome back, Catherine. I was just actually thinking that you're probably the first person that has come back for a part 2. So welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, wow. What an honor. Well, it's so nice to be welcomed back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I think we were just talking about how there's so much that we could talk about. And after the last episode, we did have a plan of meeting a little bit earlier in the year, but I just totally I think this past year I posted 4 podcast episodes. That's about it. I've been so crazy busy. I haven't even thought of
Hey,
doing
that's
this.
all good. We can just make it into an annual segment or
Exactly.
something.
Yeah. Because it was probably this time last year that we made the episode as well.
I think it was because you were talking about how things are opening up in Adelaide and how you might be able to have a Christmas party, or was it Halloween? I don't remember.
Yeah, probably.
It was during the holiday season.
So exactly, an annual thing. Awesome. Well, welcome back and thank you for coming back. But again, today I wanted to talk about, similar to last time, but your expertise in talking about money, talking about saving, going into side hustles and things like that, because those were things that I don't think we got to get into last session. And I think they're super interesting topics, and there's so much that I'm sure you can bring on to this episode. So maybe if you don't mind, one thing that I have always been curious about is things that young people, let's say in their late 20s, early 30s, things that people financially should be starting to think about. Is there anything for that age or even earlier? Is there anything that young 20s need to start thinking about? Because now that I'm finishing my master's, I'm starting to think about my finances, whereas 5 years ago, even I don't even think I saved at all. So what should people be thinking about?
Yeah, no, these are really, really good questions. And I think the sooner we ask these questions, the better it is for us. Some of the things that I wish I had known sooner, and I kind of tried to come up with a short list for you here of what are some quick wins we can get for your listeners out there who are like, okay, what are some things I can do to just feel more in control and to feel less like I know nothing what I'm doing with my finances. So one of the first things, especially now that we finished school and we have our big boy, big girl jobs, and we're making real bank now, is just to familiarize ourselves with our money and our spending habits. And what does that look like practically? It's actually reviewing your bank statements, or nowadays we have all of our banking on our phones and on applications that we can access on our desktop or phone very easily. And it's just about being in touch with that, seeing the money that comes in actually being aware of the money that looks that comes out of it and looking at it. I know this sounds so basic, but tons of us, especially if you grew up in an immigrant household like myself, we were taught to have like this scarcity mindset around money, and we're almost afraid to look at our bank accounts, or we don't understand what all the words mean, and so we kind of ignore it, or we kind of discard it and put it aside. And there's enough money to pay the bill, so I don't really need to look at it. But that would be step one, I would think, is just
Mm.
looking at it, embodying it, seeing if you can find any patterns in that. And if you do have a budget in mind, and I'm putting air quotations
Yeah.
around that, is just is so that you can kind of see on average, I spend this much on eating out each month, and this much on groceries, this much on gas. I would really like to bring those numbers down because I want to go on vacation in the summertime, and I would like to allocate some of those funds towards a trip instead. And a lot of these apps these days too have built-in functions where we can set saving goals and put money towards those goals instead. And then there's less money for us to spend on other things impulsively, as we tend to do when we're feeling stressed or anxious or nervous, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
um, yeah, so that would be my first thing. I have a couple more, but I don't know. Any thoughts on that first one?
Yeah, no, that's good. Like, I really like the allocating funds because I think, someone like me, first, let's say, I am very, I don't look at my bank statement just because, and I think it's also to do with stress. If you look at it,
Mm,
I feel like in the
right.
past, I'm like, oh my God, what have I been spending my money on? If I don't look at it, then it's just kind of like,
It
it's
doesn't
fine.
exist
It,
if I
it
don't
doesn't
look at it,
exist.
right?
Exactly, right? So for me, I mean, this past, I guess, 2 years being here in Australia and being on a budget, being
Right.
on a little bit of a stricter budget than I've ever been. I have been looking on my bank statements and I have been looking at kind of the things that I've been spending on and,
Mm.
things
What
that
have you
I
been learning about yourself?
well, like one thing that I know that I spend quite frequently on is I probably have about 3 or 4 coffees a week. And I go out and I have here in Australia, coffees are a lot different than Canada. So,
Oh, like I would
back
argue
home,
probably better, right?
it is a lot better, but also a
Coffee
lot more
culture in Australia
expensive.
is,
Yes.
yeah,
So like we don't have Starbucks here. You can't go to a coffee stop and get like a $3 or a $2 coffee. That's non-existent. They're like $4 or $5 here.
yeah,
Me being vegan, I need to get, soy milk or almond milk or something like that. And
right.
they charge here for that too. So
Of
I'm
course,
spending
yes.
maybe $5, $6 on a coffee and 3, 4 times a week. That adds up. So, things like that, I feel like I allocate my funds to because I know I need my coffee. I think that's a good treat to
Yeah,
myself. But then to other things, I might say, no, actually, I don't need to be spending this much on entertainment this month, let's say, because do I really need to see 4 movies in this month? I mean, I'm not a big movie person. Sometimes you just see the movies because I'm bored. I'm like, well, I could be spending my money on something else. So I really
mm,
like the allocating funds.
nice. Yeah, and like I don't know in Australia like what kind of accounts they have, if you can make multiple savings accounts at your bank, but
Mm,
that's something that I definitely take advantage of with our personal savings accounts. You can open up multiple, usually for free. If they're charging
mhm.
you to open up multiple savings account, find another bank,
Right.
to be honest, right? And yeah, name them and start putting funds to it. Have a coffee fund, because
Mhm.
I think that the hardest thing with budgeting is that it feels restrictive and it's not fun. And so
Yeah.
I actually always encourage, like I mentioned in the first episode, if you want to go back
Mhm.
and listen to that one, I did talk about really identifying specific saving goals and having things like a treat yourself fund, because
Yeah.
you want to enjoy your life too. You're working so hard, you're making this money. If you just put it all towards debt and investing, you actually can't extract value of life now when you are young and healthy. You have mobility, you don't have children, like you can go travel around the world. That's when you should be doing these things, because guess what? When we're 65, 85, like we might have all the time in the world and all the money, but we don't have the health that we do in our
Mhm.
20s, right?
Exactly.
So, so like that's something that I would want to let young adults know, and for your listeners to know too, that yes, it's important to like look at your finances, be mindful of your spending and save and invest, but don't let that take away all the joy in your life. There's that funny
Yes.
like TikTok audio that's like, did you know there's a like 85% chance that if you stop drinking coffee, you'll take away all the joy in your life? Like
I believe that. Yep.
something I might have butchered it, but I laughed so hard. But I agree, it's absolutely true, right? If that Starbucks or if that handcrafted coffee in Adelaide is what you need to get through the day, like don't deprive yourself. It's $5 in the grand scheme of things. That's not going to deter your retirement plan, right?
Hmm.
That's a drop in the bucket. So it's about balance, right? Just like
Yeah.
everything else in life.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in that. I don't think, I think we only live once. And, that to an extent, I'm not going to go out and spend thousands of dollars every week, but I think you
Yeah.
have to do the little things that make you happy. And I'm a big believer in that. I don't think I need to be the type of person that needs to save every single penny every single week. And, I do have a coffee machine at home and I make my coffees weekly, but every now and then I feel like it's good to go out and get a
Yeah.
professionally made coffee, like something
Yeah.
that is a little bit different. So, yeah, I'm a big believer that just make doing the little things that, make you
And
happy
like
is very
for
important.
me, I know I agree completely. Like for me,
Yeah.
I think of the coffee when I'm going, if I'm going to go out and buy it, I want to find like the cutest coffee shop and I want
Mm-hmm.
to bring my favorite book there and I
Yeah.
want to soak up the ambiance because it's not just a $5 cup of Joe. It's also
Mm-hmm.
like taking in the atmosphere, the
Absolutely.
service, the people that are there, exploring a new neighborhood or a new part of town. Like it's banking experience points, which I think is
Yes.
also just as important as how fat your investment account is. If you have lots of money sitting in the bank and you have zero life experience, then what's the point of all that money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
that's something to always keep in mind as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the other things that I had written down, especially for young adults who are kind of hitting new milestones in life, something worth checking out is your credit score.
Mm.
If you're someone who's looking to finance a new vehicle or purchase a home, it is worth getting to know and understanding how credit scores work
Right.
and understanding how you can kind of gamify it to work to your benefit prior to trying to acquire a loan. Because believe it or not, it's kind of dumb how you can like jack your credit score up or dock it down really
Yeah.
quickly. But if you're needing to buy a car or a house, it is something that you have to be mindful of. And there are lots of great credit hackers out there that can show you what you can do to increase your score or what to do to get the numbers back up if it's been hit recently, but for whatever reason.
Mm.
So lots of resources on YouTube, Google it. I'm sure there's tons of
Cool.
other Instagram accounts that probably do
Yeah.
that too. But that's something that I would think about just because I think young adults are often trying to plan like next steps in life, right?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I had no even clue about that. I mean, I know what a credit score is, but I didn't even know to think about that. Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah, yeah. So that's just because we moved into a new house since we last
Hmm.
talked, and we
Oh,
moved in
wow. Okay.
January.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. So it's not just the wallpaper I threw up;
Yeah.
it's actually my actual home
The house.
office now.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But that's kind of when I got into it more and learning more about credit scores and realizing like how fickle they actually are. And I'm like,
Right.
this feels like a video game. Like, this
Yeah.
isn't real, is it?
Yeah.
Simple things like if you cancel a credit card or apply for a new credit card, guess what? Both of those events lower your credit score.
Oh.
And so I'm just like, what the heck? Why? And
Yeah.
like just learning these little things before you get into that stage of like wanting to get excited about buying a house and then you find out you can't qualify for the mortgage is heart-wrenching and
Hmm.
heartbreaking. So
Yeah.
the sooner you can learn about it before you have your heart set on a place or on a car, it's good to know what you're qualified for a loan before the heartbreak happens.
Right. Right. Okay. That's a very good
Mhm.
point. Thanks for
Mhm.
mentioning that.
Okay, I have two more and then we
Yes.
can move on
Yes.
to the next
I'm
thing.
excited.
The third one is to save an emergency fund. I think I
Okay.
talked about this last time,
Hmm.
but there's a new term for it that I've been
Mm.
seeing floating around that I kind of love. Last time I was saying how it's important to have 3 to 6 months of your living expenses saved in a high interest
Right.
savings account.
Okay.
That's in case you lose your job, you move to a different place, or you get injured and you can't work for
Mm-hmm.
3 to 6 months. You
Mm-hmm.
have enough in your savings account to pay the bills, right?
Right.
Now there's a new term that's come
Oh,
around for
okay.
this, and it kind of lends into what we're going to talk about later in the episode.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's called like an FU fund.
Oh,
I don't know if this
okay.
is a censored podcast,
No,
but
no.
but basically what it is like an FU to the man kind of fund.
Right.
Meaning that if you have enough saved to pay your bills for 3 to 6 months, if you really hate your job, if your boss is being a total jerk, or you've been looked over again for the promotion or the raise, and you're just sick of it and you're done, you can walk out the door knowing that you can still cover your rent, groceries, gas,
Right.
dining out, your lattes for 3 to 6 months. And you have 3 to 6 months to job hunt, rewrite your resume, go on interviews, side hustle up the
Yeah.
wazoo, whatever it is, and leave because you're no longer reliant on that paycheck. And you can actually like throw a middle finger up to the man and say, you know what, I don't need this anymore. I deserve to be treated better, and walk out the door. Like,
Yeah.
how empowering is that?
Oh,
So
I know.
that's
I
what some
really
people have
like
been
that.
calling
Yeah.
it. They've been
Mm-hmm.
calling it my FU fund. It's like I'm saving for my FU fund because I'm really not liking the toxic work culture. And once like the final straw breaks the camel's back, they're just like, F it, I can
Have
walk
it.
out that
Yeah.
door and I don't need to look back. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, imagine just sitting on that cash, and you
Mm-hmm.
can just walk out anytime.
And I feel like that's a very good point because I was talking about this with a few of my friends the other day, and I feel like our generation, being the millennials and even the younger generations are in that boat now where we're not 100% like we don't care any sense that if we are in a job or if we're in a situation that we're not 100% happy with, we're totally okay with quitting and going to find the next thing. I'm in that boat, finishing my master's, looking for physiotherapy jobs. I'm like, if
Yep.
I signed a contract, but I'm not totally happy in 3 months, I'm totally happy with quitting and
Yep.
finding something else. So having that FU fund, in that time that you're finding something would be very smart opposed to just quitting altogether. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a very, very important point. And I really love that FU fund
Yeah.
because it like
Yeah.
again, we're just that generation that I think is in that FU mindset. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we all had that, it's a sense of security, right? It's
mhm,
knowing that you aren't waiting for the next paycheck to cover this month's rent or next month's rent, and you can walk out the door. You'll still have the same place to live, the same food that you eat.
mhm,
You get to hang out with your friends as you normally do, and now you have breathing space,
yeah,
freedom to be creative and to
yeah,
figure out what your next steps are. What you're really buying yourself is time with that
yeah,
money, right?
mhm,
And hopefully less stress and anxiety and like
yeah,
just an opportunity to heal, get better. Like someone who's just complete their masters like on a totally different in a totally different country across the world, like
yeah,
you might want some time to breathe and
mhm,
figure it out, right? Instead of having to figure out a next job right away. So
yeah,
it's really cool when I heard people starting to call it their FU fund. And
yeah,
then a lot of people were quitting their jobs and either starting their own business or starting with another competitor that offered better benefits and better pay.
right, yeah, yeah, that's smart. You got to do what's
Mhm.
best for you at the end of the day.
Right. And
Mhm,
honestly, like, I think you're right. Millennials, Gen Z, like, we're so different from the boomers and the Gen X that are our current bosses that are
yeah,
running different ships. And the mindset is shifting, right? Like things
mhm,
are changing. It's not about, stay like come early, stay late, don't ask for much, keep your
mhm,
head down, work hard, and then you can have a pension. They don't even offer nice pensions to us anymore.
yeah,
So why are we being so loyal for
yeah,
what, And
exactly.
yeah, and so I'm just like, I don't know. I think it's worth it for us to, yeah, work hard, understand that our money is working for us and
Mhm,
protect ourselves. And then don't settle for less, really. It's
yeah,
like find a work culture that you actually like or start your own.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
I
it's
love
kind of
that.
cool.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Perfect. Now, what I want to like dig a little bit deeper in, and I know we kind of went over a few of these things in the last episode, and that's saving tips. So if you guys want to go back and listen to the last episode, Catherine went into so many great saving tips there, interest-free funds and looking at the different bank accounts and things like that. But I want to know a little bit more on how people can save in a smart way. I think
Mm.
we all hear of the ways, and I grew up learning of the whole you get a paycheck, you put a certain amount in your savings, you put a certain amount in your checkings that you can have fun with, like the percentages. But
Yeah.
there's got to be different ways, you know what I mean? Instead of doing the whole 60-40 or 30-70 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I just think
Yeah.
that's old and maybe dated, and who knows, there might be better ways out there. So is there a better way, or do you recommend doing the whole percentage thing?
I think percentage thing work that only works for people who are really into numbers and actually
Mm,
have a grasp of their current financial situation, which newsflash, not many 20 something year
yeah.
olds do.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what percentage of our paycheck we spend on dining out or groceries or
Yeah.
Netflix or Spotify. Like we just pay those bills, and if there's
Hmm.
enough money left over, then we go shopping or we go eat
Hmm.
out, and maybe some of us put it into our investment accounts, right?
Yeah.
Like, but it's such a wide variety that people do. I think more practically, I always again go back to having goals based savings,
Mm,
right? And so have a target that is actually defined. Like, say I want to go on a trip to Mexico, all inclusive resort, girls' trip with my friends. And
yeah.
let's say I can book something for like $1,200, right?
Right.
If I know I want to go by next year because it's kind of cold in Edmonton here in Alberta, I don't want to be here in November next year. I'd rather be on a beach in Mexico. Then I can set a goal today and say, okay,
Yeah.
in 1 year, I want to go on this trip. I need $1,200. That is $1,000 a month. Or
Right.
sorry, $100 a month.
Right. Yeah.
Math. 12 G's. I could probably go on a trip around the world
Yeah,
then
I
for that
know.
much.
I know. A
Sorry,
big trip.
$100 a month, right? And so that very tangibly for me then is like, hey, I need to save 100 per month in order to have enough to fund this trip
Right.
next year, right?
Hmm.
Obviously, realistically, we're going to charge it to our credit cards,
Hmm.
and I'm going to book the flight, book the hotel, maybe make some dinner reservations or something like that. Maybe there's
Yeah.
a concert I want to go to. I can buy all those tickets on my card. But throughout the year, I can be saving $100 a month. So when I have to pay the bill, I have
Yeah.
enough to pay it,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So, like, that's what I always say. I know you have goals, attach a number to it, and then how many months until that goal? Divide by that number of months. Or if you get paid weekly or bi weekly, divide it
Hmm.
by how often you get your paycheck. Then you know
Right.
exactly how much to save per paycheck to
Hmm.
hit a goal. And it's way more satisfying then because now it's like very clear cut. Now I know I have $1,200. I can book that flight, I can book the all inclusive, and I know I have the cash for it, and it's guilt-free spending on the trip that I
Hmm.
know I want to do. And you're focused for that whole year too, because you know what you're working and hustling for. And so, yeah, that's how we do it
Right.
for ourselves. I know some people just like doing random saving, and so
Yeah.
a lot of Instagram accounts. I don't know if you see this, but they'll say like, hey, stop scrolling, if you see this, send $20 to your savings account.
Right. Yeah.
Or hey, the holidays are coming up, send $100 to a savings account, right?
Yeah.
And so like some people like that, so there
Uh-huh.
are content creators you can follow me on Instagram. I
Hmm.
I do some of those reminders too when different time of the year is coming up to be like, hey, Halloween's coming up, hey, Christmas is coming up, here's a little checklist that you can use.
Yeah.
Some people like those reminders. So you can
Hmm.
find people that will do that for you. Or if you're really nerdy like me, you can put it in your own calendar and remind
Right.
yourself to send money to your savings account.
It's count.
And it's like you're
Right.
paying yourself, you know?
Yeah. Good feeling. And I think it's
Yeah.
a little bit like easier, both goals and that. I think because it's a smaller and more attainable way, you know what I mean? Setting those
Mm.
smaller, like thinking back to, let's say, $100 a month, let's say, I feel like
Yeah.
that's pretty attainable and that's pretty achievable for most people. So if you just set a goal and you figure out, each paycheck, how can I reach this goal and not
Yeah.
have to maybe sacrifice, everything, maybe you need to
Mhm.
stop, or maybe you need to decrease your shopping, maybe you can only
Well,
buy
even if we
one
break that down,
sweater.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
like if we break it down, like most people get paid weekly or bi-weekly,
Mhm.
right? If we
Yeah,
break down $100, that's $50 per paycheck if you get paid twice a month.
yeah.
I easily spend $50 when I go for dinner and drinks
Mhm.
with my
Yeah,
husband.
yeah,
And that's like per person. So it's
exactly.
probably more like $100 for both of us.
Mhm. Yeah.
Also, let's not talk about how inflation has been
Yeah.
crazy this last year because of COVID.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have cost us much before, but it definitely does
Mhm.
now.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking, yeah, it's one night out that we don't eat that
Mhm.
saves so that we can go to Mexico. That's a
Mhm.
sacrifice I'm willing to make. So
Exactly.
that's why it's so good to tie it to your goals, because that will be your motivation and your reason why.
Yeah.
And as long as you, that's why I said in the last episode too, is like very specifically name your savings accounts, add
Right.
emojis, add pictures, add exclamation points,
Yeah.
whatever it is that will inspire you to remind you, like, hey, this is your coffee fund. You love coffee. So put money in here so you can use it guilt free to
Mhm.
buy the fanciest latte on the menu.
Yeah.
Um, and you don't have to stress about it because you allocated the money for this
Right.
experience. So don't worry about it and
Mhm.
enjoy it, right? Same
Yeah.
thing for the Mexico trip idea.
Yeah. Again, yeah, I think, having just little goals and fun ways for you to save, eh, to me, it sounds good. To me, if I did things like that, and hopefully, and then in the future, I will, I'll, I'll easily be able to save if I, make things fun and if I make things attainable. There's nothing like the feeling of, oh, I need to like put $500 every month in my saving account, and I have to say no to all of my friends and this and that. You know what I mean? Like,
But
there's nothing
why,
like that
right?
feeling. Exactly. But why? It doesn't need to be like that. That's probably bad planning on my half if I have to do that. You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
another thing that I'm curious about is, we're talking about saving for this big trip, but what about for people who just want to, get more money or earn more money and go to their boss and be like, "Hey, I want a raise." You know what I mean? Like, how does one do that? Because I think that's a very daunting thing, going to a boss and asking for money, renegotiating your
Hmm.
contract or whatever. So,
Hmm.
how does somebody go about doing that, or should they?
Um, Always, yes, you
Yeah.
should, because you
Mhm.
deserve it. Yeah, so always, yes, you should always negotiate for more salary and higher pay because um, guess what? First of all, inflation, right?
Yeah.
The power of the
Mhm.
dollar that you're paid when you first got hired on is not the same dollar that you're taking home today.
Right.
A great time to do this, because you're absolutely right, it's completely daunting to like stroll up to your boss's office. Not that we work in a physical office anymore, I think most of us are online, but like request a Zoom call with your boss
Yeah.
so you can ask for a raise. Very daunting. So a great time to do this is during your evaluations, which
Right.
tend to happen every 6 months or every year depending on your company. That is a great time to come prepared to the meeting with facts and figures and then ask for a raise. A great way of doing this, like there's a couple accounts that I follow that give really good advice.
Mhm.
I think one is like her first 100K, and then
Okay.
the other one is like Danny with dollars or something like that.
Right.
I'll
Yeah.
try to find their handles and email them to you later.
Yeah.
But they have really good negotiation tactics for us to use. So, first thing is come up with an actual list of things that you've accomplished in the last year or 6 months, however long the term for the evaluation is, with
Mhm.
things that you've done to either increase the company's profits, streamline different workflows for them, things that you've helped your colleagues or your team with, and
Mhm.
especially things that you've spearheaded or led on your own, or implemented or like headed yourself, you
Right.
want to really highlight those and show how it's a positive impact for the company and why you deserve either a pay raise or a title change, something like that, like whatever it is you can negotiate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
always ask for more than you actually want, because
Right.
likelihood is they're going to give you a lower offer. Another
Yeah.
pro tip is to ask, what is your budget for promotions or pay increases for this quarter or for this period?
Right.
It's kind of the lingo, so you're not showing all of your cards. And they often won't tell you either. They'll say, like, well, what are you hoping for, Jordan? Like, how
Mm-hmm.
much of an increase do you want? You're like, well, I just want to understand what the budget is that we have. These are the things that I've done that I think deserve a pay raise. Another great thing to do. Sorry, I'm like
No,
totally
no, I love
floating
it.
everywhere.
Yeah.
But another great thing to bring to this meeting is an original copy of the job description of when you were hired. Because you know how
Right.
they have like bullet points of the duties and tasks you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then beside it, you write all the duties and tasks you actually have been doing. And
Right.
if like the original list was 5 points and now you're doing like 15 points, say
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, when you hired me for the rate of, $20 an hour,
Yeah.
these were the 5 things I was supposed to do. I'm actually doing these 15 things and I've spearheaded this project and I've done this too.
Mm-hmm.
I've increased our profits for this last quarter by this much. Um, I either deserve a higher title because now I'm
Mm-hmm.
outgrowing that old job description, and I deserve a pay raise
Yeah.
because I'm doing a lot more. Otherwise, I can go back to just doing those 5 things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we all do a lot more than I think that job description, announces. Everybody kind of gets into a job and is like, I don't know. I think as you grow with the company, you do a lot more, you take on a lot more. So that's
Yeah.
a very good point there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And honestly, like good employers should be bringing out the original job description in the first place during the eval,
Yeah.
because what are they evaluating you against, right? Hopefully, it's
Mm-hmm.
what they hired you for.
Yeah,
And if they're
exactly.
not, red flag.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, thank
Mhm.
you for those. Cause yeah,
Mhm.
that's again very daunting thing that people always, I mean, everybody wants a raise, you know what I mean? And whether you deserve it or not, that's a whole different ball game. But
Yeah.
for those who do deserve it and those who really feel that they deserve and want a raise, it could be daunting, and not
Mhm.
knowing what you need to go into it with and when
Yeah.
you should go is, I think, the hardest thing maybe
Yeah.
is, what time of the year is for me to get like ask for a raise, and what do I need? Like, what do I need to present? Because
Mhm.
you can't just kind of go in blind, you
Yeah.
need to kind of prepare.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
season actually is a perfect time. So I don't know when you're releasing the episode, but
Right.
this is the time of the year when people get their year-end bonus, their
Yeah.
holidays, their Christmas bonus. And that's also when they get the bonuses from corporate, right? To
Right.
dole out.
Yeah.
And guess who keeps most of that usually is those big wigs sitting at the top. And
Yeah.
you deserve a slice of that pie. So
Mm-hmm.
if you are bold enough to not have to wait until the eval to bring it up,
Mm-hmm.
I think now is a good time too to just say like, hey, boss, I just wanted to take some time before the year end to chat with you, go over my performance or however you
Mm-hmm.
want to word it. That also shows you're being proactive, right?
Yeah.
And that shows that you're trying to get things done before the end of the year, before the holidays. I think they can appreciate those things too. And I hope this perspective can also just help encourage those that normally get very anxious or nervous around evaluation
Mm.
time. Now you're
Yeah.
kind of taking the reins, right? You're coming into the
Right.
meeting with your own agenda, with your own motivations underneath, and you're ready to. I mean, clap back if they're trying to tell you you're
Yeah.
not doing your job because you have a list of all the things
Yeah.
that you've done, the overtime you've booked, the vacation time you didn't take, whatever it is, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you have facts and figures to bring to that, and I hope that helps to gain confidence too, so
Right.
then there's less nerves going into the meeting.
Right. Perfect. Okay. Now, another thing that I wanted to, and one of the last things that I want to talk about today, and something that I'm so interested in, is talking about side hustles. I think side hustles is, even in this last 2 years with COVID, is something that I think everybody has had time to work on a lot more with, being
Yeah.
home a lot more, having a lot more time on their hand. But it's also something that some people haven't started yet or are still kind of maybe struggling with. So, side hustles being something like this podcast, for example, or
Yeah.
people out there with a YouTube channel or whatever, having a little
Or a
finance
vegan
business
food
or,
blog.
yeah, or a vegan food blog. I've done that in the past as well. Like all of those side hustles are things that people like to do because they have a passion about, but might not, it's called a side hustle because it's on the side, it's done on the side, it doesn't pay your bills and whatnot. So how do you recommend people going about side hustles financially, because it can be a very hard thing, you know what I mean? It can be a hard thing for people to work on this, spend hours and hours on this project, make very little, but as your, let's say, finances start growing through this side hustle, it could be a daunting thing for people to quit their 9 to 5
Yeah,
job for the
totally.
side hustle. So
Mhm.
what are your opinions on side hustles and how do you think people should go about them?
Well, it's funny that you're asking me this question because I was gonna throw it back to you and be like, you're the
Yeah.
side hustle king
Yeah.
that I know.
Yeah.
Like your multiple Instagram accounts. I used to
Yeah.
follow that vegan food blog as well,
Yeah.
and now joining you on this podcast. But I think the struggle, you're right, is about actually getting money out of these side
Hmm.
hustles, right? Monetizing it and finding a
Yeah.
way to actually earn. Ideally, what we'd want is passive income. But if you
Hmm.
have to put in some work and eventually this will become your full time gig, then you need to make sure it is either out earning what you're currently making or at least making enough to sustain the lifestyle you want.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And once you're able to have your side hustle income either match or exceed what you're currently making, that's when I think you can comfortably leave your 9 to 5 and go fully into your side hustle because now there's the financial stability.
Hmm.
But I think the biggest hurdle and struggle is how do you get to that financial stability, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, I think what is really hard for a lot of us when we're starting out on side hustles is we're working so hard to pump out content and we're spending tons of time to make content, create it, post it, and we're looking at the insights and the numbers, trying to make sense of it all. But we don't have a single penny in our bank account from all the work that
Yeah.
we're doing.
Yeah.
And so, how do we do that? And if you have been dabbling in the side hustle industry or trying to start a YouTube channel or a podcast and you watch some videos or read some books on it, they will all tell you the same thing. The money is not in like the Google AdSense or all of
Yeah.
that. It's about getting those big contracts, getting ad sponsorship, doing
Hmm.
partnerships with either big brands or other companies that will pay you for your time and making your podcast, writing that article, posting that blog or that Instagram or that Facebook post. People who pay you and compensate you for that, that's what you need, right?
Hmm.
Some other creators who do more like of the abstract arts where they're just like, I don't have like a book I can sell, but I make short films or I make I play music. Then they have like a Patreon account where people can
Hmm.
subscribe to them. And basically, people who like your work, your fans, pay you
Hmm.
a monthly subscription. So then you can have income to focus on your craft. Right.
Right.
But that takes time too. So, like, you do have to build content and get enough subscribers or people purchasing your product until it's making enough on average each month that it will pay your rent, it'll pay for your food, it'll pay
Hmm.
for your coffees, it'll pay for your vacations. Then you can quit your 9 to 5 because now I have a solid base of followers, fans, clients, if you
Hmm.
will, who are helping to fund my talent, my skill, the thing that I bring into the world. And now I can comfortably leave. So that's kind of like a very big broad picture. But I think the hardest thing is like finding the things to sell, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think like you mentioned so many great points, and there's a few key ones that, one thing is that time, it doesn't happen overnight, very, very, very few people, make it overnight on, a podcast or any
Yeah.
side hustle that is, so taking the time to kind of build this and find the product and make it something that you're happy with, because at the end of the day, if you're not happy with it and if you're just pumping out content to pump out content, then
Yeah.
I think people can see through that, you know what I mean? So I think you gotta take the time to build a solid product. And another point that I really liked is the money is not in the Google ads and all of that. It's the big, sponsorships and things like that.
Yeah.
When I did my vegan vans blog in the past, yes, I had Google ads on my website, but I did not make anything from that. It was from, all of the partnerships that I worked with. It was from me
Hmm.
posting an Instagram post about this company or this and that, it was
Yeah.
from those brand deals that I partnered with. It wasn't from the little things that people, I think everybody can attach to their
Yeah.
website. And, for you to make, I think, a big earning on Google ads is you have to have and lots of traffic, which
Traffic,
most people
clicks.
do
Yeah.
not have, you know what I mean? So it's it's gonna, like, again, it's just like anything. It takes time for you to build, you know, these
Hmm.
relationships with these brands. All of the brands that I
Yeah.
built the relationships were small, like Vancouver-based companies, and it took time
Hmm.
for you to build relationship with these people. So that's another great point that I really liked you mentioning, because
Yeah.
again, I think people just really, really, really want to bring the side hustle, and quit their 9 to 5. Um, but it can't always, you can't always do that right away. You need to, again, be making
Yeah.
what you were making before, or adjust how you're living if you're not making that same.
Hmm. And like, I think it's the trap that so many of us fall into when we're trying to start a side hustle. Is like, I got to get my branding, I got to get my
Hmm.
website built up, I got to do
Hmm.
a brand photo shoot, and it's honestly kind of hilarious when you
Yeah.
think back to it. You're like, you're sinking money into building a
Yeah.
website and getting these photos done. You don't even have a product yet. You have zero followers, or like
Hmm.
you have 30 followers. It's
Yeah.
like, how, maybe make some money before you start spending it,
Yeah.
and provide some value to your audience. Let them know what your thing is. For example, my thing is giving financial advice, right?
Hmm.
And like helping people with their budgets, going from like, I know absolutely nothing to I know when I'm going to retire and I get to live my life the way that I
Yeah.
want without stress. Like
Yeah.
that's what I
That's
provide for
key.
my clients. That's the
Yes.
value that I give. And
Hmm.
so all the content I create is supposed to help nurture and foster that audience and build
Hmm.
and pique curiosity so that they will book a meeting with me, and then I can
Right.
help them with their financial plan and eventually get paid for helping them with their investments or their insurance or whatever it is that they need.
Hmm.
But you have to have a goal, right? Just like we talked about earlier in this episode, you
Hmm.
have to understand why you're taking that picture and why you're posting it with that caption and with those hashtags. What are you trying to do ultimately,
Hmm.
and how does this serve that goal? And really, at the end of the day, we all want to get paid, right? So like,
Yeah.
is this going to help me get paid?
Yeah,
um
exactly.
yeah. And so, like, I think having all of those things in mind so that you don't stress about having the right brand color palette and like getting
Yeah.
my website just perfect, like those things you can figure out later. First, you have to
Hmm.
figure out what's the thing that you're good at and that you're
Hmm.
passionate about and
Yeah.
that you can sell the shit out of,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah. And so, like, some of the ideas I had, I like what you said about your blog. Writers, like, there's tons of
Yeah.
us out here, college students, master's
Hmm.
students, that have written tons of papers in our lives. And
Yeah.
maybe there's some stuff that we could even reuse that we can edit and embellish or
Yeah.
update or whatever and submit to various blogs, because there are
Right.
tons of blogs that do well, but they need to post content and they
Mm-hmm.
hire writers to
Yeah.
actually write articles for them. You could probably sell some of your vegan van recipes and
Mm-hmm.
articles that you wrote to
Yep.
other blogs and
Exactly.
accounts that need content,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get paid for that.
Yeah.
And you can even get paid royalties later or whatever, depending on the type of piece that you're doing.
Yeah.
Cooks, they can sell recipes, they can put an ebook together, make it really
Right.
easy, put an ebook together, sell
Mm-hmm.
that ebook. That can be evergreen passive income. And what
Yeah.
that means is just like an evergreen product is something that doesn't age, right? That you
Yeah.
can use forever. That
Mm-hmm.
chickpea curry recipe, that's good now and it
Yeah.
will be
It's
good
good
later,
forever.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you sell that for 20 bucks a pop, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
got 20 recipes in it. That's a lot of value. And
Mm-hmm.
if you could be 80 on a rocking chair and someone's like, oh, look at this recipe book, it's only 20
Yeah.
bucks for 20 recipes, you could still be collecting money later
Mm-hmm.
on in life. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like, there's so many creative ways for us to just capitalize on the skills and passions and things that we're good at already naturally and put it in an ebook, put it in a post, write it in a blog, and get paid for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. It's getting creative and having that passion. Again, like, these side hustles, most people start a side hustle is because they have a passion in that. And
Yeah.
if you're just going into something for the money, I think that's the first mistake in the beginning is, if you're like, okay, well, what are ways that I can make lots of money? Like if you
Yeah.
don't have that passion in the beginning and you don't have that passion plus creativity, it's not going to go anywhere. So I think you have to have both of them.
Hmm.
Having creativity is very important, I think, but also having the passion in that project is very important. So yeah, I really like that point for sure.
Yeah. There's one specific side hustle that
Yeah.
I was looking up when you
Hmm.
asked me to look into them that honestly like is so genius to me, and
Yeah.
I it makes me giggle, but it's also like, why didn't I think of this?
Right.
Did you know there are some people, obviously, like they're animal lovers,
Hmm.
so they do pet sitting and house sitting as a combo. And
Oh.
there's some people that do specific house sitting, that they only house sit and pet sit for bougie neighborhoods, and some of them do it in like
Ah.
specific places that they would want to travel or vacation to. So get this,
Yeah.
they're basically essentially getting paid to go on vacation and to be surrounded by pets, which they love and they'll
Yeah.
take care of and like water the
Yeah.
plants and whatever, like maintain the property.
Yeah.
But like imagine how many rich people are out there with these super fancy homes with these very like fancy pets and
Yeah.
plants and things, and they need someone to care for their home and they'll pay you good money for it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, that's such a smart side
Oh my
hustle. And
God.
some people
Okay.
do that.
I'm gonna send this clip when this episode goes live to one of my best friends here in Australia because she does that. She is a pet sitter and she travels like just here in SA. She like goes to different houses and like pet slash like house sits and some of the houses that like she takes pictures of are like beachside, like
Right?
beautiful properties. And I'm like, oh my God, like that is genius. She's just making money for walking a dog or like feeding a dog every
Yeah.
morning but then living in like this humongous guest room. Like it's
Yeah.
amazing.
I know, like there honestly, like side hustle culture is real. There's a podcast and also an Instagram account I follow is like Yo Quiero Dinero.
Right.
Janice, she talks about side hustles like crazy. Her she actually out earned her and outpaced her earnings from her 9 to 5 earlier this year, and quit and left her 9 to 5 to pursue the side hustles all
Yeah.
um like all in for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
She has a food blog, she has her
Mm-hmm.
podcast, she has her Instagram account, and I think she has like probably a million other things too.
Yeah.
But she is like earning 6 figures,
Wow.
okay, in
Okay.
all these side hustles. And there are other side hustlers out there like Delianne, the money coach, who's making like and like her first 100K, they're having 6 figure months. So their
Yeah.
side hustles have grown so big that they're making over 100,000 in 1 month in
Month.
sales.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, there is money
Oh,
out there.
yeah.
There's people that want to buy whatever it is that you're willing to sell.
Yeah.
And it's just about setting things up and doing it, right? And
Mhm.
it's like, and doing it in a smart way too, right? So
Yes.
yeah, I would recommend like people check out those accounts or those podcasts as well, because there's lots and lots of resources out there.
Yeah, perfect. All right. And Catherine, where can people find you? Again, this is in the last episode, but plug it in here and it'll be in the show notes below, everybody. But where can people find you? Do you have Instagram, email, or whatever you want to post? Post it away.
Yeah, sure. I was just gonna say, like, for the listeners of this podcast, because I really enjoy being on here, I am happy to offer like one free consultation meeting with me if they just want to learn more, dive into their finances, and just get a one-time financial snapshot. I want to offer
Perfect.
that to your listeners. Maybe we can come up with a code or something later.
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
yeah, and then I'll give them access to my spreadsheet for budgeting and the net worth tracking tool as well.
Awesome.
Because
Yeah.
I'm guessing if they're clicking on this episode, they want to get started on their financial
Yeah.
journey or find ways to
Mm-hmm.
tweak it.
Yeah.
So for that, I'll give you my email. It's just catherine.lay@canadalife.com. And then
Perfect.
for Instagram, I'm chat with Cat Lay. So that's just ChatWithCatle. And that's me across Twitter,
Perfect.
Instagram, Facebook. All of it is the same. So yeah,
Awesome.
thanks for
Well,
having me.
yeah, thank you again for this part two. Like I said in the beginning, you're like the first part two ever. So there was just so much to talk about.
Honored.
And I think like we covered it greatly and it was, or you covered it amazingly. And it was, yeah, so informative and awesome. So thank you for coming back for a second round.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jordan. It's always a pleasure.
Alrighty, thank you all for listening to today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. And as always, please go ahead and leave the podcast a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps out the podcast, and I appreciate it so much. And be sure to head into the show notes to find Catherine's links and take her up on her offer of getting that free consultation and chatting with her. She is such an awesome person, such a knowledgeable person, and she'd love to help you. So be sure to tell her that you got this link from the Transparently Jordan podcast and send her an email. See you all next week.